Well, hello again, guys, from here at Whitley Park, where it is absolutely glorious this morning. Yes, the last time I spoke to you, I'd just fallen victim to the Greek god of thunder in Athens. I was absolutely soaked. Well, yeah, it's far more pleasant here today. And I've just been inside the building there behind us talking to Eddie Howe. And usually we can hear Newcastle preparing just behind the trees there. But this morning, Eddie said they've got a video analysis meeting first ahead of the game against West Ham on Monday. So what I want to talk about, well, first of all, I want to revisit part of that Q&A video I did out in Athens, because one of the questions I was asked is what did I expect Newcastle to do in January with regards budget and targets and priorities and everything else. And part of the answer I gave was that I wasn't expecting massive business because Newcastle are still limited by PSR, and all the noises I was getting back was that spending would be limited. Now, a lot of the replies to this were saying that doesn't make sense. How come they had 65, 70 million pounds to spend in the summer? Now all of a sudden you're trying to tell us there's no money to spend. Well, I didn't say no money to spend. The money is always there. That is the thing with PSR. It's not about having that pot of money per se. And Eddie has just said that to us inside. It is about the scope to spend it. Now, you'll be saying back at me now, well, they're going to spend that in the summer. How can't they spend that now? Okay, if they'd spent £65 million in the summer, and again, Eddie has just said to us now, the numbers quoted were never as high as 65 million. The club weren't willing to go there. The club couldn't go there. We do believe now the fee to be Newcastle's limit on that was somewhere in the 50s. Now, if Newcastle had spent that, it still would have meant they'd come into January or June even, having a PSR deficit to satisfy to avoid a points deduction. Just because they had that money to spend there in the summer, yes, they can go and spend it now, but it doesn't then mean there hasn't got to be outgoings to comply. And that is the message Eddie has just reiterated. It's about trading. If players come in, players are probably going to have to go out. Now, can Newcastle go and put £50 million down for a right winger or a centre forward or a centre half in January? Yes, they can. The money is there because it was there in the summer to do the Mark Guy deal. But it falls within the same counting period from that June to June. So if Newcastle had spent it in the summer, they would have had a big problem coming into this window and trying to avoid what happened last June when they're scrambling to sell players. So I hope that makes sense. And I do understand why you guys came back and said that it didn't make sense, because there's the optics of it that you think there's that £70 million war chest there, and then how can you arrive at January and have guys like me and others saying, well, actually, you know, you've got to temper this because they might have to sell first before they can buy. But we can only tell you what we're being told ourselves. That's the job as journalists, and everything I'm getting back is not to expect big investment in January. One, because it's a difficult market and it's about extracting value and identifying the right players that will be to the benefit of the club in the long term, not just the short term. I don't think there actually are massively at the moment, if you look at where Newcastle are, any great short-term needs. Now, that could change in 5 weeks with form and fitness. Of course it could. But also as well, going into January, if you spend 50, 60 million pound in the summer, you've got a longer period to address the imbalance with regards to PSR calculations. If you do it in January and you aren't able to get the players out that you need, well, then you go into June and all of a sudden you're in a situation whereby clubs are able to put a gun to your head, like Nottingham Forest and like Brighton to an extent, we're able to do with Elliot Anderson and Cuba Minte. So that is what Newcastle need to avoid. And that is why in January, by way of explanation to my previous answer, Newcastle have to be very, very careful. And also don't forget, beyond this season, PSR calculations and rules are changing, and the way it's going to work with regards wages, turnover, revenue, it's actually probably going to make it harder for Newcastle than the current calculations do. So to that end, they've got to be doubly careful and leave themselves on a sound footing going into summer, because that's when Newcastle will want to do most of their business, and they'll have a better idea of where they're at in terms of what football they can offer, in terms of what the top stars like Gordon, Isak, Bruno, where their future lies. You know, if Newcastle don't make the Champions League, they might all of a sudden, if one of those wants to go, have that war chest we speak about. But if they do make the Champions League, then, and there's still a chance, then everything of course changes. So I wouldn't expect Newcastle in January to put themselves in what could potentially be down the line a very difficult position. Now, it was worth it at the start of the season if you're bringing in Mark Guy for the entire campaign, yes, but that's changed just a little bit now. Now, on this subject as well, just to address one or two other comments from viewers, some said that because Newcastle complied in June, does that not then mean the start of a new 3-year period and a clean slate? Well, no, it doesn't. It's a rolling 3-year period, and by that I mean that when the first year drops off, what were years 2 and 3, well, they become years 1 and 2 in this new accounting period of June 25. Well, that becomes Yeah, 3. And also as well, just because you've wiped the slate clean, so to speak, it only means you're level and you're clear for that 3 years. In effect, and I know this is getting complicated, but if year 1 drops off, year 1 might actually have been a year in which you were in profit. So to that end, you could be in a worse position, having to address a deficit from the word go. So it's complicated. I hope that has made a little bit of sense, but Newcastle are absolutely bound by PSR to come back to the point we've been trying to make. Now, I use the phrase they might have to sell to buy, and some interpreted that as an Isak, a Gordon, a Bruno having to go. Well, no, it doesn't. You know, my information is that it's not a big sale for this accounting period that's needed, but if you're going to spend 40, 50 million pound on a player, there will have to be trading in the other direction. And from what I'm led to believe, smaller sales would satisfy that. And the name we've spoken about for a long time is Miguel Almiron, of course. There was the potential deal with Charlotte and the MLS. There's been rumoured interest this time in River Plate, his boyhood club. But the problem with Almiron is to get that 10 to 15 million fee that Newcastle previously wanted, the clubs he's being linked with probably don't have that. And there's the wages as well. But to answer that question, no, I definitely don't. I'm not saying if Newcastle want to go out and spend £50 million on a right winger, they've got to then sell Anthony Gordon for £80 million or Alexander Isak for 100. No, that's not the information, but there does need to be smaller trades there to give them that scope. So I do hope that has helped go a little way to try and explaining what we meant in terms of Newcastle not necessarily being able to come freewheeling into this January and have that war chest, that big pot of money there to spend. There's going to have to be trading if they are to do that. Now, a story I brought you yesterday in my Newcastle Confidential column, I'll put the link in the description below, is that just over our shoulder there, you can probably see the area now. There's some cars parked through those trees, but Newcastle are going to expand the footprint of the current training ground. And the common question which came back to me on this was, does that mean they are now staying there? Is this the super complex being built on the current site here at Benton, or is it a temporary measure? It's more of the latter. Now, it's going to be permanent buildings, from what I'm led to believe. It's not going to be temporary buildings, the cabins which currently exist there, like the Arvidas and Pet Hut, where the Scouts were housed for a while. The Scouts now are in that building up there. Yeah, the blinds are drawn. That perhaps suggests they're not very busy ahead of January. But no, it's going to be a development which will allow the accommodation of the increased backroom operation behind the scenes there at the training ground. So yes, it's good news in that it's going to alleviate some of the pressure, because the current training ground, while they have put £10 million into it and it is improved, it's still nowhere near the standard needed, really, if you're going to attract the top players on a consistent basis over a period of time. And as part of the story, I did detail a little bit of the frustration that I've been made aware that exists internally. And this talks to the questions I was asking. Now, yes, it's a temporary measure. Is it a good thing that Newcastle are looking ways to improve the environment which they're currently in? Well, yes, of course it is. But ultimately, those players and a lot of the guys who signed when they did so in 2021, 22, you know, immediately after the takeover there, within a year of the takeover going through, they were told there was talk of a new training ground, of a new stadium. I think there's an acceptance now that that probably isn't going to happen for those guys. If a new training ground is 3, 4, 5 years away, even in a stadium at least that, well, Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes, others, you know, into the 30s or late 20s, it probably isn't for them. They're not going to see that. So I think there is a little element of frustration there among some in the squad that certainly the new training ground doesn't appear to be on the immediate horizon. Now, does the fact that they're going to develop just behind the fence there, does that mean they're staying where they are? Well, no, it doesn't. Those plans for a new training ground are absolutely, you know, they're there. They've identified sites up at the racecourse. There's 1 or 2 others in Ponteland and around that area out towards the west of the city. So yes, they are looking to build a new training ground, but certainly for now, they are staying where they are. And I get why there might be 1 or 2 on the inside of the playing squad thinking they'd hoped it might just have been different. Now, there is a game on Monday against West Ham, of course, and Newcastle do go into it on the back of 3 straight wins. And I'll go straight off with my prediction. I think they're in a good place now. Yes, this offers a different challenge, and we have seen at home against those teams who do sit in with that lower block. How do you then break them down? I've got every confidence and belief that Newcastle are in that good place. West Ham, conversely, aren't in that good place, and I can't see anything other than a home win on Monday night. Now, I was right about the prediction down in Forest. You get a feel for these things when you're around this club and the squad and the team and you're going home and away for so long. You do get that feeling. I had that feeling going into Forest, didn't I? I was quite, you know, resounding in saying that you just got the impression that things were beginning to click. Those big players coming into form. Lewis Hall at left back. Finally, Newcastle having a left back who looks comfortable in the position. Tino on the opposite flank as well. Just all over the park. Bruno, Joe Linton, Anthony Gordon, Alexander Isak. When you've got those names running into form and into a good place physically, I honestly think this Newcastle team can beat anyone on the day. Of course they can, and that is why West Ham on anyone, West Ham or West Ham, they should absolutely be putting them away on Monday for me. Well, fitness-wise, who'll be available, who won't? We believe the squad is pretty much exactly the same. Anthony Gordon went away with England. He was fine. He's okay. He's come back in good spirits after his first England goal, of course. All the international players have reported back okay, and the fact they've got the extra time until Monday definitely aids the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, who have travelled, of course, greater distances. Now, Callum Wilson, Kieran Trippier, where are they at? Callum Wilson, well, he'll train today, very shortly, just over his shoulder there. It doesn't sound like he's going to make Monday. Newcastle will probably exercise a little bit of caution there, especially given Alexander Isak is in the form he's in. They've got those options across the front three right now. I wouldn't expect to see Wilson involved on Monday, but Kieran Trippier, he could make the bench. He trained yesterday. He's looking sharp, and I perhaps would expect to see Trippier in the matchday squad. In other news I brought you last week in my Newcastle Confidential column, Emil Kraft, well, he's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. He's had an op on his broken collarbone, and that's a blow for the squad, really. He's such a good guy, Krafu is the column on the inside, to lose that solidity in terms of the squad depth and just the solidity of a solid guy. You know, I think that is a blow, especially as Kraft was in good form as well. So the one change we expect to see to the team on Monday night will probably be Lloyd Kelly coming in for Dan Burn, who of course is suspended at the heart of the defence there. Well guys, I've had to come indoors to finish this video now, because just as I was going along quite nicely there, from nowhere, and this happens on Tyneside, somebody turned on the wind machine unexpected. The gusts picked up, and what I recorded was pretty unusable in the end, which is a shame. It was great stuff. I revealed all the January targets and everything. No, I didn't. But no, what I am going to try to reveal is the starting 11 on Monday night. And I touched on that there. We think the only change will be Lloyd Kelly for Dan Burn. But what does he do in attack? Because we saw down at Nottingham Forest, didn't we? It was Anthony Gordon who started on the right and Joe Linton on the left. Well, Gordon didn't look at all happy out there on the right in the first half. It was only in the second half when he went back to the left that he looked better and more like the player we know. And Joe Linton, all of this debate, you need to put him back there out wide as part of that front three on the left wing. Well, he's gone to the right and he's probably had his best 45 minutes of the season. So I do think they will start with Joe Linton on the right, Anthony Gordon on the left, and in this continuous search to find the formula of a front three and a midfield three that works and be consistent. And we've seen Eddie Howe's teams, when they are at the best, they do have that consistent run of personnel in system. I do think with Bruno Guimaraes in the middle of that midfield, Longstaff and Willock either side of him with the front three we've just spoken about, that is the best way forward for now. Now, you might say Sandro Tonali, of course, during the international break, he scored his first goal for Italy. He will be coming back here full of confidence, wanting to play. I know a lot of you guys want to see him in the team. I would still say that is back on Tonali to put himself in the team, and what he's done in terms of his starting performances so far perhaps haven't warranted that, where I don't think he can take Longstaff and Willock out now. Harvey Barnes as well. Eddie was asked this morning, is Harvey Barnes becoming a super sub? And Eddie laughed and said, well, no, he's not a super sub, and the player certainly won't like that tag, but he has shown himself of late capable of impacting from the bench, better than he has done as a starter. So again, that comes back to the player. So in terms of that 11 we're going to see on Monday night, yes, unchanged, bar the one change, if that makes sense, Lloyd Kelly for Dan Burn, with those two wingers perhaps flipping how they started down at the City Ground. Well guys, that's it for now. Thank you again for watching. Leave your comments below the line with regard to January spending. Should Newcastle speculate to accumulate, if you like? Do they have to, now they've run into this decent run of form, they might be in a strong position going into January, should they put big money down for a new right winger, centre forward, a right-sided centre half, whatever position you think that may be, and then worry about recruiting the PSR deficit and making good on those calculations? Or do they play it sensible? Do they play it steady? We're certainly hearing that is the policy they're going to adopt. We'll have to wait and see as ever, and we could get to January and Newcastle might have lost 2 or 3 key first team players. Fingers crossed not, because certainly on the injuries front it seems to be working far better than it was last season, but still a little way to run between now and then. But please guys, in terms of this video, hit like, comment, subscribe. There's a super thanks, and I'll put in the link in the description below as well. I've joined Blue Sky. I'm still going to post everything I did on X. I've got my WhatsApp channel as well, but I will put a little flag in the sand and blue sky and see where it takes us to. But thank you again so much for watching, guys. I'll be there on Monday night, walking up and down the terraces of the Millburn Stand afterwards, reflecting on what I believe will be another Newcastle victory. Okay, take care, enjoy your weekend. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.